I've been dead for 6 months now. Killed in a car accident. James, my husband, still thought I was just making a scene, waiting for me to come back and apologize to him, until one day, he suddenly couldn't find his watch. That watch was a gift from his Susanna. Since it was broken, he asked me to take it to the watch shop for repair. He called me, demanding, "Fernanda, are you done causing trouble? If you can't stand it anymore, just get a divorce. Who are you trying to put on a show for? Where did you put the watch I asked you to have repaired? Did you hide it? After all these years, you still can't stop being jealous of Susanna." Then I heard my sister's voice on the other end of the line. "Congratulations, James. Fernanda is dead. She'll never be jealous of Susanna again." Chapter 1. I died in a car accident. That day, I had a fight with James. I had just found out I was pregnant and wanted to share the good news with him, but he insisted on going to Susanna's birthday celebration. I didn't let him go, and he accused me of causing unnecessary trouble. He told me that if he really wanted to be with Susanna, he would have been with her a long time ago, and I never should have expected to marry him. In anger, I started smashing things around the house, letting out all the frustration I had built up over the years. He couldn't take it anymore and slapped me across the face. "Fernanda, have I been humoring you all these years?" I wasn't even sad. At that moment, I just gave up on everything. I turned to leave. "Fernanda, if you walk out of that door today, don't come back," he threatened from behind. As he wished, I never went back. I was involved in a serious car crash on my way out, and both my life and the life of my unborn child were lost. My sister handled everything after my death, and perhaps out of anger, she didn't inform James about it. But after I died, my soul inexplicably followed James around. Maybe it was because of some lingering attachment. I watched him still go to Susanna's birthday party that day. I watched as, for the past 6 months, he'd buy little gifts for her on every holiday. I watched as Susanna would call, and no matter the weather, he would rush to be by her side. Sometimes, Susanna would kindly ask, "Has Fernanda not come back yet? Is our relationship the reason you two are having problems? If so, I'll apologize to Fernanda. It has nothing to do with you. She's the one causing trouble." James said coldly, "Don't mind her. Let's see how long she can hold out." 7 years of relationship. And in the end, I left not even the smallest trace in James's heart. Maybe, from the very beginning, I shouldn't have appeared in their world, with or without me. He continued living as if nothing had changed. I was nothing but a burden, a nuisance, just when I thought James's life would continue on indifferently without me. Until that day, when Susanna asked about the watch she had given him, he suddenly remembered me, and impatiently, he called me, "Fernanda, are you done making a scene? If you can't stand it, just get a divorce. Who are you trying to impress with all this nonsense? Where did you put the watch I asked you to get fixed? Did you hide it? After all these years, you still can't stop being jealous of Susanna." Chapter 2. The phone call was answered by my sister. There was a long silence on the other end. She was probably so angry that she couldn't speak for a moment. "Say something. Did you die or what?" James demanded harshly. "She's dead," my sister finally managed to say coldly, word by word. "What kind of nonsense are you talking about?" I said Fernanda is dead. My sister enunciated, "Congratulations, James. She'll never be jealous of Susanna again." It seemed like it was only at this moment that James realized it was my sister on the phone. For a brief second, I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. But then, with a bitter sneer, he said, "What is Fernanda up to now? Does she think I'll regret it just because she's dead? You tell her, either she comes back quietly, or she'll really die out there. She's dead." I said Fernanda is dead. My sister suddenly broke down, shouting at James, "She doesn't need your regret because you have the heart of a wolf and the lungs of a dog. Enough. Ruby, I don't want to argue with you. My relationship with Fernanda is none of your business. So give the phone to Fernanda." Without hesitation, my sister hung up on him. I could see the anger written all over James's face. All these years, he had never been humbled by anything related to me. Our arguments always ended with me giving in, suppressing his rage. He called me again. Ask Fernanda where the watch I gave her for repair is. I need it urgently. I don't know. My sister replied coldly. I told you to ask Fernanda. James, you really deserve to be struck by lightning. My sister snapped through gritted teeth. She knew everything about my relationship with James, and she knew how much I had sacrificed for him. Now, seeing his behavior, she couldn't contain her disgust and anger. He began to yell. In the end, all you care about is the watch Susanna gave you. To you, a watch is more important than Fernanda's life, isn't it? My sister's voice wavered, as if she was choking up. Her words filled with frustration over my fate. James remained silent. My sister, still furious, added, Fernanda is really dead, believe it or not. I don't care. I won't answer your calls anymore. You'll only dirty Fernanda's path to the afterlife. Chapter 3. James was hung up on again by my sister. All I saw on his face was anger. There was no sign of concern for what my sister had said about my death. What was occupying his mind was still where I had hidden the watch Susanna had given him. To him, anything Susanna gave him was more important than my life. I still remember that moment when I was in the car accident. Using my last bit of strength to call him, without hesitation, he hung up on me. At that moment, he must have been thinking about how to celebrate Susanna's birthday instead. How laughable. I started to wonder how I had managed to hold on all these years. But thankfully, I didn't know if it was because I was dead or because I no longer had any feelings left for James. But even now, no matter how ruthless James was, I didn't feel any pain anymore. I just hovered in midair, watching him coldly. I watched as his anger slowly faded into calm. And after that, he stood still, frozen in place for a long time, not reacting at all. I had no idea what he was thinking. I had no expectations left for him. Then, his phone rang. It was Susanna calling. They had made plans to go hiking together today. When James saw Susanna's call, his expression visibly softened, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. I smiled too. See? When you have no expectations, you won't be disappointed. Susanna. He spoke gently. In the past 6 months, I had overheard countless conversations between him and Susanna. It seemed like I had almost forgotten how cold he had been toward me. James, have you left yet? I've prepared everything. I'm waiting for you at home. Susanna's sweet voice came through the phone. I'm leaving soon. 20 minutes. Drive safely. Susanna reminded him sweetly. Okay. James hung up the phone and immediately walked into the walk-in closet. He was looking for clothes. After a while, it seemed like he couldn't find what he was looking for. He came out of the room and yelled downstairs. Sophia, where's my Gucci tracksuit? The maid, Sophia, hurried upstairs after hearing him. Sir, I've already put all your clothes in the closet. Which one are you looking for? James, clearly impatient, snapped. The brown one, with 2 stripes on the sides and lots of English logos on it. Sophia seemed confused. She walked into the closet and searched for a while. Is this the one, sir? No. James replied sharply. I've already looked. It's not here. In fact, the tracksuit was at the very bottom of the closet. He just didn't have the patience to look properly. He never wasted time on trivial things or people. Just like how he had treated me. I don't know, sir. You're my maid, responsible for my daily needs. And you can't even find my clothes? James's voice rose. His temper seemed to be worse than usual today. Was he really in such a hurry to meet Susanna? Sophia, feeling embarrassed by James's outburst, finally gathered the courage to speak. Before, Mrs. Fernanda used to manage your clothes. She said you were particular about what you wore, and she was afraid I wouldn't do it right. Maybe you should just ask Mrs. Fernanda. Chapter 4. Don't ask her. What's the point of asking her? James immediately refused, his voice harsh. She better have the ability to never come back. Heh. So, in James's mind, my death was just a scheme, a way to get his attention. He didn't believe for a second that I was truly dead. He thought I was still using this method to make him come back and apologize to me. James, flustered, randomly grabbed a set of workout clothes and grabbed his car keys. Rushing out the door, he answered Susanna's call and went to the suburbs with her. They went hiking together. chatting and laughing along the way. My life or death didn't affect him at all. Halfway up the mountain, Susanna suddenly started to pout and refused to walk any further. James, what's going on with you today? You're walking so fast. I can't keep up. James stopped and turned to look at her. I just want to rest for a bit. Then let's sit for a while, Susanna said sweetly. James naturally took out a napkin, wiped off the steps, and let Susanna sit down. Meanwhile, he stood by the railing, looking at the view from halfway up the mountain. James, what's going on with you? I feel like you have something on your mind, Susanna said, looking at him. You can tell me anything. I'll help you carry the burden. It's nothing, James responded. Maybe just some work stress lately. I knew it. You've been under so much work pressure. That's why I brought you out to relax and take your mind off things, Susanna said proudly, looking like she expected James to compliment her. James, unexpectedly, stayed silent. Susanna's face showed a hint of displeasure, but she quickly covered it up. After resting for a while, James urged, It's getting late. Let's go. I can't walk anymore. Will you carry me? Susanna pouted again, deliberately adding, I weigh only around 90 pounds. Definitely lighter than Fernanda, right? I was definitely heavier than Susanna, but once, I was slim too. Later, in preparation for pregnancy, I forced myself to gain over 20 pounds. Finally, I got pregnant, but James didn't care. He probably still disliked my body, with all the extra fat. Why bring her up? James suddenly changed his expression. Susanna was taken aback. It seemed like James had never spoken to her in that tone before. Sorry. Susanna quickly apologized, her voice trembling. I didn't know. Did you two have another fight? No. James replied curtly. If you can't walk, let's just head back down. But we've only gone halfway. It's fine. I've got work to handle this afternoon. We should head back early. James threw out the excuse and walked ahead. I could see Susanna's face turning pale with frustration. She gritted her teeth and followed behind him. Once they reached the bottom of the mountain, Susanna sat in the passenger seat of James's car. She took the initiative, saying, James, let's have lunch together. I'm in a rush to get back to work. I'll skip lunch. Eating alone is no fun, Susanna said, her eyes pleading. Please eat with me. I promise I'll go home right after. I won't disturb your work. James, unable to refuse Susanna, agreed. Susanna smiled triumphantly. I had to admit, Susanna did have a certain charm in front of James. The car arrived at the restaurant Susanna liked. When they got out, James rubbed his stomach. Susanna immediately noticed and rushed to ask, What's wrong? Does your stomach hurt? James nodded and opened the glove compartment. When he took out the medicine box, he realized the stomach medication was gone. Chapter 5. James had a habit of stomach pain. A few years ago, his family faced a financial crisis and almost went bankrupt. To recover, he worked day and night, neglecting his health. Over time, he developed a stomach condition. After we got together, I would often cook porridge for him and take him meals, and his stomach got a lot better. But he still occasionally had flare-ups, especially when he had social obligations. To make sure he wouldn't suffer too much, I would prepare his stomach medicine in advance and keep it in the car. I would check the supply regularly, and if he was running low, I would replace it immediately. James shouldn't have run out of medicine so quickly. Thinking about it, during these past 6 months, without me around to remind him to eat properly, and with no one bringing him meals, he probably skipped meals regularly. It was no surprise his stomach problem had flared up again. I'll rub it for you, Susanna offered, leaning toward James and placing her hand on his stomach. A little massage will help. James hesitated for a moment before pushing her away. It's fine. I'm probably just hungry. I'll feel better once I eat. Then let's eat, Susanna said, as if nothing had happened. Smiling cheerfully, James pursed his lips, and the two of them got out of the car. At the restaurant, Susanna spent her time ordering food from the waiter, occasionally asking James for his preferences. James's face turned pale from the pain, but he stubbornly kept his discomfort to himself. He didn't want to show any weakness. especially in front of Susanna. He had to maintain his perfect image. I watched him, and strangely, I felt a little pleased. Maybe it was because I had finally stopped caring. Better for him to suffer. Susanna ordered James's favorite spicy boiled beef slices, and she happily told him, "I ordered your favorite dish. You should eat more." I couldn't help but notice James's face change slightly. Someone with stomach pain shouldn't eat something so spicy. Susanna didn't seem to notice James's discomfort at all. I remembered when I used to love spicy food, but for James's sake, I forced myself to eat bland food for an entire year, just to help his stomach. I suddenly realized, only those who are favored can act without fear. As for me, I had just been playing the fool all these years. When the food arrived, James hardly ate anything. Susanna, slightly disappointed, asked, "James, do you not like the food I ordered? Why are you eating so little? My stomach's not good. I can't eat spicy food." James said plainly, "Aw, I didn't know. What should I do? I'm sorry, James. I didn't mean to." Susanna looked at him with an expression of guilt, her eyes watery and pitiful. James could never resist Susanna when she acted this way. I remembered how, even during a thunderstorm, if Susanna cried on the phone, James would drive through the rain just to be with her. At this moment, I wouldn't be surprised if James forced himself to eat the spicy food just to comfort her. But in the end, James simply said, "It's fine. I'm not in the mood to eat anything right now. You eat. I'll go back to work." Before Susanna could react, James had already paid and left. As he got back into the car and started driving, he suddenly looked back at the empty box of stomach medicine. The next moment, he stepped on the gas and sped off. Chapter 6. He didn't go back to the company. Instead, he went straight home. Was he still a little upset that Susanna didn't care about his health? Of course. That's because he actually cared about her. After all, when I was unwell, James ignored me completely, and I was furious about it. But eventually, I got used to it. "Sir, you're home. Have you had lunch?" Sophia hurried over to greet him. "I'm not eating," James replied coldly. "How can you not eat? Madam said you have stomach problems, and skipping meals will make your stomach worse," Sophia said with concern. "I can make you some porridge if you have no appetite. At least porridge will be easier on your stomach." James paused for a moment but didn't reject her offer. Half an hour later, Sophia brought the porridge to James. During this time, James had been sitting on the couch watching TV, though he kept flipping through channels absent-mindedly, clearly not engaged. "Sir, be careful. It's hot." James acknowledged before slowly taking a spoonful of porridge. "How does it taste, sir?" Sophia asked. James swallowed the porridge, his voice indifferent as he said, "It tastes a lot like the porridge Fernanda used to make. It's what Madam taught me." Sophia quickly explained. "She told me, in case she wasn't at home, to make porridge for you. So she taught me how to cook it. Madam also said you have a sensitive stomach, so I should make it a little thicker and softer. Madam also said that you don't like eating vegetables, but you like broccoli. So every time I make vegetable porridge, I use broccoli instead. Madam is really thoughtful about you, always remembering your preferences." Sophia's words made my heart tighten, but I couldn't listen any longer. It wasn't that Sophia was lying. It was all true, and that's what made it feel so shameful. All the things I did for James were the biggest regrets of my life. "Sir, please bring Madam back. She's truly the one who loves you most in this world, and no one takes better care of you," Sophia couldn't help but say. James seemed to hesitate for a moment. I had expected him to reject her just like before, but this time, he remained silent. After finishing the porridge, James returned to the bedroom and lay down on the bed. From his expression, it seemed his stomach had improved quite a bit. His phone kept buzzing with messages from Susanna. "Sorry, James. I didn't realize your health situation. Are you feeling better now? Do you want to go to the hospital? I'll go with you." "James, I didn't know you had stomach problems. I always thought Fernanda would take good care of you." "James, are you angry? Why aren't you replying to my messages?" "I'm scared." After reading the messages, James suddenly jumped out of bed and quickly left the room. I couldn't help but laugh at his anxious expression. How could I have ever deceived myself into thinking that James was just taking care of Susanna as a friend? Susanna had no friends, and her parents were distant, so James was just indulging in his sympathy. Now, I felt like a complete fool. I watched him drive frantically towards Susanna. How could someone who truly loved another person allow that person to suffer in any way? I had already imagined how James would comfort Susanna when he saw her, how he would coax her, and maybe, with the right emotions, the two of them would finally be together. Over the past 6 months, nothing truly substantial had happened between them. Maybe James was afraid of the consequences of an affair during the marriage, so he had held on to some boundaries for Susanna's sake. I watched as James parked the car, rushed into the elevator, and pressed the button for the floor. He arrived at the front door and urgently rang the doorbell. The door opened. I was startled, because the person who opened the door wasn't Susanna. It was my sister, Ruby. Chapter 7. At that moment, I realized this wasn't Susanna's home. It was my sister's house. When Ruby saw James, she immediately tried to slam the door shut. James, quick on his feet, grabbed the door, and his hand got caught in the doorframe. He winced in pain but bore it. Ruby, suppressing her anger, coldly asked, "What are you doing here? You're not welcome." "I came to find Fernanda," James said, his voice low and strained from the pain. "Didn't I make myself clear on the phone? Fernanda is dead. If you really want to see her, then go die, and maybe you'll meet her in the afterlife." Ruby snapped viciously. "Enough. Ruby, this is between me and Fernanda. You have no right to interfere," James said, humiliated by her words but still refusing to believe that I was really dead. "What are you even here for? Get out! How dare you mention being a husband? Have you ever fulfilled your duties as one? Get out, now! You disgust me! You!" James wasn't one to argue, and in the past, when we fought, I'd often suffer from his silent treatment. Even now, being insulted by Ruby, he was seething but said nothing. "If you don't leave, I'm calling the police," Ruby threatened. "Fine. I was wrong," James suddenly said. I was stunned. Ruby was equally shocked. In all these years, when had James ever admitted he was wrong? Even when I cried, he always thought I was being unreasonable. "Let me see Fernanda. I want to talk to her," James said, his tone calm. "Talk?" Ruby laughed bitterly. In that moment, my eyes filled with tears. After all, I was already dead. Who was he going to talk to? A ghost? Ruby said, "James, do you really think you've been a good husband to Fernanda these years?" "I have a clear conscience," James replied firmly. "How can you say that with a straight face when you've been entangled with Susanna like this?" Ruby lost control, her emotions boiling over. "I'm not involved with Susanna like that." "Involved? What do you mean not involved? Do you really need to sleep in the same bed to prove you're involved or not?" Ruby shouted at James. "When Fernanda was sick, you were right there by Susanna's side, taking care of her. On Fernanda's birthday, a single call from Susanna and you rushed out without hesitation. When Fernanda got pregnant, you chose to celebrate Susanna's birthday instead. When Fernanda was jealous because of Susanna, you blamed her for being petty and jealous." Ruby's breakdown was painful to watch. "James, do you really think you've been a good husband? How can you say you have a clear conscience when you've done all of that?" James didn't even open his mouth to defend himself. Ruby, now completely losing it, continued, "Don't you dare forget, when you had nothing, Fernanda was the one who stood by you through the darkest times, not Susanna. So what did you give Fernanda? And what did you give Susanna?" "I gave Fernanda a home." "A home?" Ruby's laugh was filled with contempt. "What home? A widowed home? A husband who's always with other women is worse than being a widow." "Enough?" James's anger flared. "I admit that Fernanda helped me through tough times, but Susanna has also been good to me when I was at my lowest. She sold her car and house to help me fill the gaps. Am I wrong to be grateful to her?" "What did you say?" Ruby asked, stunned. Chapter 8. Not only was my sister surprised, but I was also shocked. When did Susanna sell her house and car, and give him money to cover the gap? I couldn't help but start recalling the moments I had with James. I wonder if the dead forget everything. I've gradually forgotten many things from when he was alive. The only things I vaguely remember are how I met James when I first graduated from university and started working at Lucier Group. At that time, James had just joined the company too. His parents wanted him to start from the bottom to learn, and I thought he was just like us, an ordinary employee. As a new recruit, he had a calmness and composure that set him apart from the rest of us. He was also highly capable, tall, and handsome. We were assigned to the same team, and we worked together on many projects. Over time, I started to develop feelings for him, but I only realized I had truly fallen for him one evening when, after working late, he offered to drop me home. As soon as I got out of the car, my drunk uncle grabbed me, demanding money or else he'd beat me up. My parents died when I was young, in a factory accident. Before they died, my uncle, being young and having lost both of his parents early, was essentially taken care of by my mother. After my mother passed, he had no one to rely on, and when he was broke, he came to me and my sister for help. At first, we would help him out, but as time passed, his demands grew, and eventually, my sister and I couldn't afford to keep helping, so we stopped. He became relentless, and to get away from him, my sister and I had to move. But somehow, he still found us. That night, James forcefully rescued me from my uncle's grip. "If you dare touch Fernanda again, I'll kill you. Stay out of our business," my uncle shouted. He tried to push James away, but James knocked him to the ground. "Fernanda's matters are my business, and I'll take care of them," James said firmly, and he truly did. After that, he drove me home every day and made sure my uncle didn't bother me anymore. Over time, my uncle really stopped coming around. James was like a hero to me. A sudden sharp pain hit my chest. So, it turns out that the dead can feel pain, but we just stopped caring. After James helped me get rid of my uncle, I thought about confessing my feelings. But then I found out that James was actually the heir to Lucier Group. The difference in our social standing made me feel inferior, so I buried my feelings. Later, Lucier faced a potential bankruptcy due to failed investments by the management. Many people left, but I chose to stay by James's side, secretly relieved that this was the closest I could ever be to him. I accompanied James to various social events, drinking to shield him from alcohol, even ending up in the hospital with a bleeding stomach. I stayed by his side through late-night work sessions, often pulling all-nighters. During those 2 difficult years, I was 163 centimeters tall and weighed less than 90 pounds. In the most critical moment, I transferred 1.5 million yuan, the compensation money left from my parents' death, into his account, including my sister's share. At first, my sister didn't agree, but eventually, she couldn't resist my unwavering love for James, and she gave me the money. Of course, I paid her back later. Once the money was secured, James got the company back on track. He hugged me in celebration. That night, we drank together, and under the influence of alcohol, we ended up getting together as a couple. I always thought he knew that I was the one who gave the money. He dated me, married me, and I thought it was because he was moved by all I had done for him. So, I never brought up the 1.5 million again. But now, James suddenly says that the money he needed so badly came from Susanna? Chapter 9. You're saying that Susanna sold her car and house to cover the gap for you? My sister asked again, confirming, so why shouldn't I be good to her? She even turned against her family to help me. James replied angrily, shouldn't I repay her kindness? Fernanda just doesn't understand me. Always making a fuss over nothing. Heh. My sister laughed. It was a mocking laugh, like she was laughing at a fool. She said, is that really what Susanna told you? That she betrayed her family for you? James could see the sarcasm in my sister's expression. You don't need to act this way. There are good people in this world besides Fernanda. Why look down on others so much? I look down on Susanna. Yes. My sister spat. I look down on her for being a pretentious coquette. But compared to her, I look down on you even more. My sister said harshly, let's put everything else aside. Have you ever told Fernanda what Susanna did for you? Does Fernanda know that you're just repaying Susanna's kindness? James fell silent, realizing he had never told me. I didn't know. If I had known earlier, I would have understood that he mistakenly thought the 1.5 million was from Susanna. But maybe it doesn't matter. James was just finding a convenient excuse to treat Susanna well. Even without the 1.5 million, there would have been other reasons. Is Fernanda some kind of mind reader? How is she supposed to know what you're thinking? All she sees is her husband being nice to another woman. My sister shouted, and then when she's jealous, you blame her for not understanding. I told her that it doesn't mean anything. James weakly countered. There are so many cheating men in this world. And they all say the same thing, I'm not cheating. So what happens? My sister retorted, breaking down in frustration. And yet, Fernanda still believes you, still trusts you. Despite everything, if she trusted me, she wouldn't be fighting with me like this. If she didn't trust you, why hasn't she divorced you? Why is she still struggling, still working so hard to have your child? James stared at my sister, probably stunned by her emotional outburst. You know, Fernanda almost ruined her health trying to help you build your business. The doctor said if she ever wanted to get pregnant, she'd have to gain weight drastically. Everyone thinks losing weight is hard, but the truth is, for people who can't gain weight, it's even harder. You have no idea how much Fernanda has suffered for you. James pressed his lips together, suddenly silent. Yes, back then, to gain weight so I could get pregnant, I went through a lot. I'm not someone who particularly likes to eat meat, but I ate until I vomited, and then ate some more. Forget it. It's pointless to say anything more to someone like you. My sister suddenly didn't want to continue. She was afraid that if she kept talking, she would break down herself. Now that Fernanda is gone, you and your benefactor Susanna can go live your life. Give me one more chance. James suddenly grabbed my sister's arm, his eyes pleading. I want to talk to Fernanda again. My sister hesitated for a moment. I could tell she didn't want to deal with James anymore. But then, she unexpectedly agreed. Wait for me here. Okay. My sister turned and went into the room, changing into clothes to go out. Is Fernanda not in there? James asked her. My sister didn't respond, just walked into the elevator. James followed her closely behind. Chapter 10. My sister parked the car in the outskirts. James got out angrily and confronted her. Why did you bring me here? Even if I've made mistakes with Fernanda, you don't have to humiliate me like this. My sister rarely responded. She turned and walked into a small path. I knew this was where my sister had buried me, where my parents were also buried. I saw James angrily follow her. I thought, with his temperament, he would turn around and leave, but my sister stopped in front of a tombstone. Fortunately, there was one time, during the new year, when James took time out of his busy schedule to accompany me to visit my parents' graves. So he should remember this place. What are you bringing me to your parents' graves for? James's words trailed off. Because he saw my gravestone. The gravestone had my name on it. There was also a black and white photo of me from when I was alive. He stood there, as if turned to stone, staring at my tombstone, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He kept checking over and over again to make sure it was really my name on the gravestone, to confirm whether I was really dead. I saw his eyes redden. It happened suddenly, and it was almost frightening. I felt indifferent. My sister was also indifferent. Crocodile tears were never worthy of sympathy. I don't believe it, James suddenly said firmly. Is this some kind of trick? Did you all deliberately do this to get back at me? How could someone just die like that? Who would curse themselves like this? James, do you really not know what kind of person Fernanda was? She's been afraid of causing trouble for others her whole life. Could she be the type to play pranks? And even if she's dead, she can't possibly get revenge on you. But why did she die? James was still in disbelief. Why? My sister sneered, probably remembering the horrible way I died. Tears uncontrollably flowed down her face. 6 months ago, weren't you going to celebrate Susanna's birthday? That day, Fernanda went out and had a car accident. No way. James shook his head. His emotions were unraveling. Bit by bit, he was breaking down. I didn't get the news. I never got the news that she had a car accident. James shouted. Because you didn't answer her call. My sister was also furious. In the end, she called me. She said she was going to die. Told me not to be sad. And not to bother you. My sister covered her face, overcome with painful memories, and began to sob uncontrollably. James stood frozen, looking at my grave, then at my sister's breakdown. I could see his body trembling. Was it the fear of death? Or was there just a tiny bit of sorrow because of my passing? Until the very end, Fernanda was still thinking about you. She was afraid of affecting your life. But what were you doing? You were there, singing happy birthday to Susanna. My sister cried, her voice full of resentment. She was genuinely upset for me. So upset. Honestly, I wasn't that noble. Maybe I had truly sacrificed so much for James without complaint in the past. But the last phone call I made to my sister wasn't to spare him. It was because I didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. Bang! I saw James suddenly fall to his knees in front of my gravestone. The hard ground made a loud, jarring sound. My sister glanced at James, watching him in his despair, but her eyes were full of sarcasm. Who are you doing this for? Fernanda is already dead. She can't see any of this. I could see it. I just didn't feel anything. James's behavior now was still irritating to me. It almost felt like I couldn't be reincarnated because he kept tainting my path. Chapter 11. Suddenly, James began banging his head on my tombstone. Violently. The harsh sound of his head hitting the stone echoed through the air, and soon blood began to drip from his forehead. My sister coldly watched his actions. I felt a bit of displeasure as well. If he wanted to die, he could go somewhere far away. Don't disturb my peace. My sister never tried to stop him. I, as a spirit, couldn't do anything. I didn't know how much time passed. Then, James finally stopped. When he stopped, his body curled up, and muffled sobs came from him. Now you realize your head hurts? Serves you right, James. I originally planned to follow Fernanda's will and never bother you again. But since you want to atone, I'll tell you the truth. My sister took out my phone. This is Fernanda's phone. In the notes, she recorded every little thing between you two, and what you and Susanna did to her. James slowly turned his head to look at my sister. His eyes were bloodshot. It was a look I had never seen before. My spirit twitched, drifting in front of my sister, wanting to stop her from handing him my phone. I didn't want him to have it. It wasn't that I was afraid he wouldn't feel guilty. I just didn't care for his regret. To me, this person was as good as dead. Oh, wait, it's me who is dead. But still, everything he was doing now just seemed unimportant to me. I saw James trembling as he reached out and took my phone, gripping it tightly, his knuckles turning white. The password is your birthday, my sister added. James froze for a moment. The next second, he trembled even more violently. The redness in his eyes grew more intense. My sister stood up and walked away. To her, she had done enough for James, and the only reason she could go this far was because she knew just how much I had once loved James. She didn't want my love to fade away quietly. The wind howled across the desolate mountains. My spirit was blown apart, shivering with the cold. James knelt by my tombstone for a long time, a very long time, before finally picking up my phone. He entered the password, his birthday. The screen lit up, and the wallpaper showed a photo of me and him in our wedding attire. James's Adam's apple bobbed, repeatedly swallowing. Slowly, he opened my notes. I had a habit of keeping a diary. I used to write it in notebooks, but with the advancement of technology, I began using my phone to write. I had used this phone for 5 years. I've always been nostalgic. I've been like that since I was young. Otherwise, I wouldn't have loved James so relentlessly for so many years. Chapter 12. 2018 year X month X day. I bought a new phone today and spent a fortune to get the same model as James. Today was truly a wonderful day. 2018 year X month X day. Lou's company is going bankrupt, and everyone is leaving. I'm not leaving. I'll stay by his side for life. As long as he doesn't push me away. He won't push me away. Will he? I really want to confess to him. 2018 year X month X day. James complimented me on the porridge I made today. I'm so happy. It's worth it for all the failed attempts. I finally succeeded. 2018 year X month X day. Drinking is so uncomfortable, but thinking that if I drink a little more, James will drink a little less, it doesn't feel so bad. 2018 year X month X day. The company has a 1.5 million shortage in funds. I accompanied James to a lot of banks, but none of them would lend money. Watching James in such a panic, I couldn't help but finally ask my sister for the inheritance our parents left behind. That money was left to us by our parents. With their lives, I knew how important it was. But my sister, the best person to me in the world, still gave me the money. I promised that once I succeeded, I'd treat my sister even better. 2019 year X month X day. James finally secured the project, and Lou's company was back on track. James took me out to celebrate, and we drank a lot. He said he was grateful for my constant support and thanked me for all my efforts. We were together. I felt like the happiest woman in the world. 2019 year X month X day. I met James's Susanna today. She is really beautiful, fair and gentle. What should I do? I feel a little jealous of her. James is being too kind to her. 2019 year X month X day. James suddenly brought up marriage. I was a little flattered. He said his parents were urging him, and we had been dating for a year. After thinking for a bit, I agreed without much hesitation. After all, I've never thought about marrying anyone else but him. 2020 year X month X day. On our wedding night, James went to Susanna's place. He said there was a power outage at Susanna's house and she was afraid of the dark. So once the power came back, he'd return. But that night, he never came back. I even received a message and a photo from Susanna. She said, "Borrowing your husband for one night. I'll give him back to you tomorrow." Her tone was clearly bragging. 2020 year X month X day. James started spending more and more time with Susanna. She could just call, and he'd go. I complained to him, but he said I was overthinking, that he and Susanna had been together long ago and it was impossible for anything to happen between them now. I was very angry, but I really believed him. I believed he wouldn't betray me. 2021 year X month X day. I thought I could keep tolerating James. I kept telling myself every time he left that he was just seeing an ordinary friend. Everyone has their own social circle, but Susanna kept sending me pictures of her and James together. She said, "Fernanda, don't mind. James and I have been like this since we were kids. There's nothing between us." Was this a confession? Was this a provocation? 2022 year X month X day. I don't want to write anymore. The purpose of my diary was to record the happy things, but now it's all negative emotions. I'm getting more and more unable to tolerate the situation between James and Susanna. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. I'm on the edge. 2022 year X month X day. I'm finally pregnant. I stared at the ultrasound report for a long time in silence. Am I happy? Or anxious? I had been looking forward to this child for a long time. Since I married James, I had wanted a child as a symbol of our love. But the doctor said I was too thin to get pregnant. So I turned my sadness into hunger. I vented all my frustration with James and Susanna on food. Hard work pays off. And after more than 2 years, I finally had a good result. But at this moment, I wasn't as happy as I imagined. I don't even know if James will be happy. I've told him many times that I want a child, but his reactions have always been indifferent. Would he dislike the child because of Susanna? Would he distance himself from Susanna because of this child? Can we, because of this child, return to a simple, happy family? Chapter 13. My notes ended that day. After all, I died after that day. I watched as James's big tears fell on my phone screen. Was it guilt? Was it regret? But what's the use? I truly felt nothing. I'm sorry. James suddenly spoke. His voice was hoarse. Go to hell! I used all my strength but couldn't shout. I really wanted to tell him. Don't be so fake. I didn't just have no feelings for him anymore. I had never thought of forgiving him. I didn't know you were pregnant. If I had known. That day. James couldn't finish his sentence. Maybe he didn't even know if. knowing I was pregnant. He would still go to see Susanna. After all, how important was Susanna? James clutched his chest in pain. Probably his stomach pain flared up again. He curled up and collapsed in front of my grave. The sky was gradually getting darker. Suddenly, James's phone rang. His body twitched. I almost thought he was dead, too. He took out his phone. It was a call from Susanna. He answered. Hello, James. Where are you? I think I'm being followed, and I'm too scared to leave the house. Can you come to my house? Susanna's voice was trembling with tears. Okay. James agreed immediately. It was really laughable. In the evening breeze, I laughed so wildly. Was this his confession? How moving! I watched as James stood up from the ground. His stomach didn't hurt anymore, and he seemed calm. He got in his car and drove straight to Susanna's house. The door opened. Susanna revealed her innocent smile. James, you're finally here. I was so scared. She even deliberately leaned into his arms. James pushed her away. I didn't see anyone around your house. Really? Maybe they left when they saw I didn't come out. Susanna casually made up an excuse. No matter how ridiculous the excuse, James would believe it. James, come here. I made porridge for you. Doesn't your stomach hurt? I heard porridge is good for your stomach, Susanna said sweetly. James was pulled by Susanna and sat at her dining table. She then served him a bowl of porridge. Try it. I made it myself. Susanna looked at him expectantly, then paused. James, what happened to your forehead? It's swollen and bleeding. You just noticed? James asked sarcastically. The light was too dim earlier. What really happened to you? Susanna asked, feigning concern. It's nothing. He picked up the bowl and took a bite. After swallowing, there was no change in his expression. It was as if he didn't even taste the porridge. Is it good? Susanna asked eagerly. Have you tried it? James asked her. No. I just wanted you to eat it, Susanna playfully replied. Is that so? James put down the bowl, a mocking smile on his lips. Is it not tasty? Susanna seemed to notice something was off. She quickly took a bite herself. She almost spit it out. Her face contorted in disgust. I'm so stupid. I put MSG instead of salt. I'm terrible at cooking. So clumsy. Who's born knowing how to cook? James asked Susanna, as if asking himself, are you angry? Fernanda's porridge was always just right. James murmured, she must have tasted it every time before giving it to me. Chapter 14. Susanna's face clearly darkened when she heard James mention me. James, what's wrong with you today? You seem different. You never used to compare me with Fernanda. You know very well that I've never suffered. Unlike Fernanda, who doesn't even have parents. Susanna's voice was full of grievance. James looked at her with increasingly unfamiliar eyes. Yes, Fernanda doesn't have parents, but I never took care of her properly. James, what happened? Did you and Fernanda argue? Did Fernanda threaten you? Susanna said angrily. Do you like me? James suddenly asked her. Susanna froze, surprised. She hadn't expected James to ask such a question. Over the past 6 months, I'd been by his side, but I never heard him mention his feelings for her. Now that I'm dead, has he finally decided to take that step without any more worries? I watched Susanna's face turn red as she softly said, James, after all these years, I thought you knew how I feel about you. So you like me? James asked to confirm. Yes, I've always liked you. If I didn't, I wouldn't care so much about you. When I heard about your stomach pains, I even learned to make porridge for you, even though it wasn't good. If I didn't like you, I wouldn't have sold my car and house to help you. Because you like me, you wanted to ruin my relationship with Fernanda, right? James sneered. I didn't. I've always respected your relationship with Fernanda, so I never crossed any boundaries, Susanna said, flustered. Did Fernanda say something to you? Do you not trust me anymore? You say you sold your car and house to help me, but do you remember which day you gave me the money? James asked, his voice hard. How would I remember something that happened so long ago? How much was it? James pressed. Over $1 million. I gave you all my money at that time. Susanna's eyes darted around. she suddenly screamed as James stood up from his chair and grabbed her neck. Still lying to me. Let go of me. I didn't lie to you. James, please let go of me. Susanna's face turned red. Her eyes filled with fear. The $1.5 million emergency funds I got back then were from Fernanda. James gritted his teeth. He tightened his grip on Susanna's neck. Let go. Susanna was crying. Frantic, she reached for anything on the table, grabbed the bowl of porridge James had just eaten, and threw it directly at his head. James flinched. Susanna took the opportunity to push James off her with all her strength. James had blood dripping from his head. James, have you gone mad tonight? Susanna screamed. James' eyes were bloodshot, full of murderous rage, and he trembled as he asked her, why did you lie to me? Why? I only did it because I like you. Susanna finally admitted, knowing she couldn't lie anymore. I went abroad for 2 years, and when I came back, you were with Fernanda. We were meant to be together. She's not good enough for you. You're the one who isn't good enough for me. James said harshly. Why did you leave the country when I was at my lowest? Was it because you were afraid I'd drag you down? Susanna couldn't find a counterargument. I watched their quarrel from above, and found it amusing. After all these years, this smart James finally understands what kind of person Susanna is. Chapter 15. You really deserve to die. James' eyes burned with even more hatred. Don't do anything crazy. James, murderers pay with their lives. I'll call the police. I'll call them right now. Susanna's hands were shaking as she grabbed her phone. Before she could dial, James snatched the phone from her and threw it on the floor. The next moment, he grabbed Susanna by the neck and dragged her toward the balcony, trying to throw her off the building. Susanna desperately clung to the railing, screaming, "Don't kill me! I'm sorry. I shouldn't have lied to you. I shouldn't have ruined your relationship with Fernanda," Susanna begged, tears streaming down her face. Let me go. James, please. I'll apologize to Fernanda. I'll do it. Apologize? James' face twisted with cruelty. Fernanda is dead. Susanna. Fernanda is dead. And she's been dead for 6 months. Susanna froze. She thought she had misheard. Fernanda died because of you. Susanna, she died in a car accident. Along with our child. James shouted angrily. If it weren't for you, Fernanda wouldn't have died. She and my child wouldn't have died together. How can you blame me? It's your fault. You were the one who chose to come to me. Fernanda died because of you. It has nothing to do with me. Susanna struggled to argue. James shoved her. Susanna's upper body hung in the air. She lived on the 16th floor. If she fell, she would die without a doubt. Yes, Fernanda died because of me, so we'll die together. To atone for her, James said slowly, his grip tightening. I watched them fight on the balcony. Was I happy? Not entirely. Revenge does have some satisfaction, but to say I was truly happy? No. After all, I was already dead. No matter what happened to them, it couldn't bring me back to life. I might as well watch. But in the end, the drama didn't have a perfect ending. Susanna's screams caught the attention of a neighbor, who called the police. Just when things were about to escalate, the police managed to pull both of them back from the balcony. Susanna was sent to the hospital. James was arrested for intentional injury. His parents came to bail him out, but he refused. Later, Susanna came to visit him in the detention center. When she arrived, she still had a bruise around her neck, the marks from James nearly strangling her. James, Fernanda is dead, and you're doing this because of her? Is it worth it? Susanna asked him. I regret it most because I didn't kill you along with her. James said through gritted teeth. Fernanda was just an ordinary woman. She didn't deserve you. And yet you're willing to sacrifice everything for her. I'm the one who doesn't deserve her. I tainted her love for me. The thing I regret most in this life is that you hurt her. Ha! Susanna laughed bitterly. I came here to talk and withdraw the lawsuit. But since you haven't learned your lesson, you can enjoy your prison life. To me, your money matters more than you. Yes, you're right. I never gave you money. I lied to you. Fernanda did good deeds without taking credit. And you took all the credit for it. That's right. I did meddle with your relationship with Fernanda. I kept sending her photos of us being close. I thought it would only take a year or so, and Fernanda would be the one asking for a divorce. That foolish woman ended up putting up with you for over 2 years. Chapter 16. Enough. Susanna. Enough. James suddenly snapped. He stood up, looking ready to strangle her. Susanna stepped back in fear, and the prison guards quickly held James down. Sit down quietly. Enjoy your prison life, Susanna said, turning on her heels and leaving without looking back. I watched James' defeated and lonely figure, but it didn't stir anything inside me. Letting go of someone truly brings no more ripples. Later, James was sentenced to 3 years in prison for intentional injury. The day James was sent to prison, my soul finally left his side. I started drifting around, visiting my sister. My sister had found a good partner and moved on. I watched her get married, get pregnant, and slowly overcome the shadow of my death. 3 years passed. My soul still wandered, growing weaker and more fragmented. One day, I saw a familiar face, but I couldn't remember who it was. He had a buzz cut and had just come out of prison. He went straight to my grave. Why was he here? I watched him crouch in front of my tombstone, his bony fingers gently caressing the photo on the grave. He said, Fernanda. I'm sorry. Fernanda? Is that what my name is? I regret it. Really regret it. I saw pain in his eyes. It looked so deep, like his heart was torn apart. All these years, I've liked you. I always have. I had feelings for Susanna, but after I met you, I loved you. Your unwavering support for me was not unseen. I only owed Susanna gratitude. I thought she did everything for me, so I tried to be as good to her as I could, to make up for my guilt. I always thought that once we were married, you'd be mine and I didn't need to feel guilty anymore. I took your unconditional love for granted and forgot that you, too, had feelings, that you'd hurt because I ignored you. As he spoke, he started crying. Then he pressed his hand to his chest, as if the pain was unbearable. After a long silence, he muttered to himself, What's the point of saying this now? You're gone. Fernanda, you're already dead. I'll never see you again. I miss you so much. I really do. He cried for a long time in front of my grave. When he left, he said, I'll be with you soon. I didn't understand what he meant, but I inexplicably followed him. I watched him drive, stopping on a street corner. A whole day passed. Suddenly, he slammed on the gas. With a loud crash, a woman was hit and thrown several meters away, her body mangled, blood pouring from her. His car crashed into a nearby railing, the front end completely destroyed. I was a ghost. How could I not be terrified by such a bloody scene? I didn't hesitate and turned to float away. As I left, I heard someone calling my name. Fernanda? Is that you? You've been with me this whole time, haven't you? I was scared. Someone was chasing me. As I floated, my mind grew more and more hazy. My soul scattered. I knew I was leaving this world, leaving forever. At that moment, my soul shattered. In a hospital maternity ward, the cry of a newborn echoed. Extra chapter. I ran over Susanna. Both of us should atone for Fernanda. I never knew that dying in a car accident would hurt this much. How much pain did Fernanda have to endure after her car accident before she was able to call me? And yet, I cruelly rejected her. I thought she was just trying to stop me from celebrating Susanna's birthday again. Finally, I died. I deserved to die. My soul left my body. Suddenly, I saw Fernanda. It's her, right? I can't be mistaken. For the past 3 years, I've dreamt about her every night, her shadow haunting me. I chased after her figure, but she floated faster and faster. Don't go, Fernanda. Please don't go. I panicked, because her figure was becoming more and more transparent. No, please, don't leave me. I finally caught up to her, reaching out to hold her in my arms, but I went straight through. Fernanda disappeared right before my eyes. Not even a shadow left. I went mad, searching for her everywhere, madly shouting her name, Fernanda. Fernanda. I kept searching. I searched every street, every alley. Fernanda, don't hide. I was wrong. Please don't hide from me. Later, I saw a little girl who looked so much like Fernanda. She smiled so brightly. Her parents loved her so much. Wait, why does this little girl's mother look so familiar? Do I know her? I feel like I only know Fernanda. Fernanda gradually grew up. She blossomed into a beautiful woman. So many boys liked her. Eventually, she accepted the best one. I watched them fall in love. I watched them embrace. I watched them kiss. I watched them make love. So this is what it feels like to watch the person you love be with someone else. This kind of feeling, the kind that tears you apart. I'm sorry, Fernanda. I'm sorry. Later, Fernanda got married. She wore a wedding dress, and her smile was so full of happiness. I should have blessed her, but my heart ached so much. Not long after, Fernanda got pregnant. Her husband was so happy, spinning her around, wanting to give her the best of everything. They went to prenatal checkups together, did prenatal education together, and looked forward to the baby's arrival together. Fernanda was about to give birth. Her husband was even more nervous than she was. Fernanda was in labor for a long time. My soul couldn't enter that place. I couldn't be there to accompany her. I even felt my soul slowly dispersing. I knew I was about to leave. Before I left, I just wanted to see Fernanda one last time. To see her child. The child I owed to Fernanda. The one I could never repay. Heaven is indeed fair. A person like me, full of sins. How could I be worthy of experiencing Fernanda's happiness? In the end, I never saw Fernanda again. Never saw her child. All I felt was a powerful force pulling me away. I suddenly opened my eyes. Surrounding me were my elderly parents, who had once been so strong but were now both white-haired. James, you're finally awake. You've been asleep for 25 years. My mother cried uncontrollably. My father stood beside her, silently shedding tears. So, I didn't die. I'm still alive. Then, was seeing Fernanda just a dream? I recovered over the next few days and was finally able to sit in a wheelchair. I was pushed down the hospital corridor. 2 people walked toward me, and I instantly felt my eyes tear up. I saw her, affectionately holding her husband's arm, with her husband holding a baby in his arms. They were both glowing with happiness. They walked by, teasing the baby. No one noticed me as they passed by. After a while, she turned her head. Our eyes met. Tears streamed down my face, but in her eyes, there was a flicker of disgust. Her husband asked, "Do you know him?" She shook her head. No. Then she followed her husband away. As they walked away, I heard her quietly murmur, "That little old man seems kind of annoying. He didn't even do anything to you." Her husband said lovingly, then seriously added, "You're not allowed to look at other men, not even old men. Jealous. Yeah, I'm a jealous old man, but only for you." The 2 of them bickered as they walked farther and farther away. I watched them, my vision growing blurrier, until they disappeared completely.